Well, well, well. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Movie Emporium's movie review of Supergirl. It is directed by Craig Gillespie. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, in this second film of the DC revitalized franchise that is run by James Gunn and Peter Safran, this film, of course, focuses on Kara Zor-El, who is, of course, played by Millie Alcock. It is a kind of origin story in ways, as well as just a kind of story about how this girl was kind of transplanted from, of course, Krypton, and she became kind of disenfranchised and disillusioned. And basically now on her birthday, she's going out and partying and getting drunk and basically doesn't live up to the potential that, of course, Clark Kent lives up into in Superman. Well, something happens with this character played by, of course, Matthias Schoenaerts, who plays Krim, and this young girl, who, of course, is played by Ridley. And basically, the dog, Crypto, gets hurt. She has to save Crypto and go after the bad guys. And, of course, young girl has a vendetta for what happens to her in the movie. And then, of course, Lobo, played by Jason Momoa, comes into the mix. But basically, it's a story about how somebody needs to find the light in the dark and become the superhero that they eventually need, as well as this movie being against time to basically save Crypto in a lot of respects. So that's the story, and it has action set pieces, and it's the second film of the DCU. But of course, this story is based on or inspired by Supergirl, Women of Tomorrow, so there you go. Okay, so this is one of my most anticipated movies of 2026. I put it on my most anticipated list for a reason. I thought the trailers were quite good. Millie Alcock seems to be perfect for this role. It seemed like it was going to have a lot of fun. Crypto's in the movie, of course, because it's her dog. Of course, it came from Krypton. And I was expecting quite a bit from this movie. Craig Gillespie, who's known for doing I, Tonya, and of course, Cruella, which I actually kind of enjoyed, but of course, Lars and the Real Girl. He's a pretty talented director, but you never know when it comes to high budgeted $200 million productions on whether that's going to work. And after last year's Superman came out, it wasn't like a complete failure, but it wasn't like the level of box office hope that they were hoping for. And this movie doesn't have a lot of what I would call drive behind it or box office potential. It's actually looking to be in the low 70s, to be fairly honest, when it comes to budget, or when it comes to its take at the box office. But with all that said, I had a lot of hope for this movie. Millie Alcock, of course, The House of the Dragon. Emily Beecham, David Krumholtz, David Corenswet is, of course, in this movie as Superman. Jason Momoa seems perfect as Lobo. And I haven't read the comic book that this movie is kind of inspired by. I don't know much about it, but, I heard it's really good, so I'm going to have to get a chance to read it when I get a chance. But with Craig Gillespie directing and with everything that is kind of riding on this franchise, we'll see how it plays out. How is this movie? How is this second film in the DCU? And as somebody who was anticipating this movie, who was super excited for it, it is probably the biggest letdown of the year for me, to be fairly honest. And what I mean by that is this movie is disjointed. It's a movie that is very by the book. It follows the same beats. It doesn't have anything new. May have the worst villain in the entire comic book history. That's saying something, Dark World. I'm looking at you, Thor the Dark World. And it's a movie that doesn't invent or try anything new. And outside of the character of Millie Alcock's Kara Zor-El, the characters are pretty one note, not really that great. There's nothing really that interesting. The bad guys are terrible. The story is pretty rough around the edges. And it's not a very good movie. It really isn't. It's probably going to be the most disappointing movie I've seen this year because it's a movie that had a lot of potential, but for an hour and 48 minutes, it basically feels like it's out of place and feels like it doesn't know what it wants or what it's trying to do. And then the story is so samey and so like by the book that it just feels nothing. I felt nothing after this movie. I didn't feel any hope. I didn't feel any excitement when the big kind of, shocking moment, the thing like in Avengers Endgame when all the heroes came out to attack Thanos. There's that moment, and it's even in Superman, where there's that one moment where it just kind of rises up to the level and just kind of makes you excited. That what I'm talking about. And here it happens, and it just drops like a lead balloon, to be fairly honest. There's potential behind the characters themselves. I think Millie Alcock is really good as Supergirl, Kara Zor-El. I think she has a lot of, sadness between what she has to deal with, and as we learn about her history and how it kind of plays out. But it's so short-lived and so kind of compacted that it doesn't give you time to really feel anything. And then when it goes on this journey with this young girl who's basically the trope of the young girl who seems to have the destiny to take down the main bad guy, but it doesn't really add much to anything. And I think Eve Ridley, who plays that young girl, is just kind of miscast and not very good. And once again, it just... Matthias Schoenaerts in this movie is just one of the worst things I've seen in a comic book in quite a while. One of the worst villains. Not really interesting, kind of creepy, to be fairly honest. This is a movie that has some pedophilia jokes in it that aren't very funny and a little gross, to be fairly honest. It also has the action set pieces are just CG, like ugly. They're not really interesting at all, and it becomes a movie like similar to like The Flash or any of the DCU, where the character is like perfectly cast, like the main character, the main hero, but just everything in between it just doesn't work and doesn't fit. And it feels like Millie Alcock is just doing everything she can to keep the script together. And it just, when you see it, it feels like there's like another 40 to 50 minutes cut out of this movie, because it kind of cuts the scene, and nothing plays properly, and it's just really weird. And like, you have no idea who the bad guys really are. They're kind of like discount ravagers in a lot of respects, and I don't think that's what their intention was. But there's a problem in this kind of comic book history where it didn't feel like they were just kind of playing by boredom. It actually, you look back at the original Iron Man, you look back at even kind of Superman, the Christopher Reeve stuff, and to an extent maybe even the Zack Snyder stuff, where it at least attempted to be something interesting. And even though those movies outside of Iron Man weren't that great, this movie just feels so substandard by the book. And don't even get me started on Jason Momoa, who's perfect as Lobo, who should be Lobo and should get his own TV series or movie or whatever he should get. But he didn't need to be in this movie. I agree with a lot of the reviewers, where he just feels out of place in this movie. It feels like a glorified cameo, to be fairly honest. It doesn't add to anything. It's like, here's a badass character, and we're just not really going to use him very well. He just kind of comes and goes in the movie, and how that's set up. And there's so much potential with Jason Momoa as Lobo. I don't know what they were thinking when this movie putting him in there, but the music and the cinematography and the visual effects on Crypto are still terrible, and the fight sequences are so substandard and by the book. There's like one cool sequence when they're on a bus in space that's really cool. That uses like teleportation, but yeah, I'm sure this is going to be a movie where the crowd has more fun than the regular reviewer, because I didn't find this movie good at all. And that's kind of where I land. That's my take on Supergirl. It's not a very good movie. It's the most disappointing thing I've seen this year so far, in a summer that's looking not to be that great, to be fairly honest. Maybe Spider-Man will bring us out, Odyssey and stuff like that, which is what it's looking like. But yeah, Supergirl, such a shame. It really is. So that's my take on Supergirl. Judge it for yourself. Let me know what you think in the comments below. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching. If you like what you see on this channel, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell at the top. The fun's coming next. If you like this video, awesome. Hit that like button. And as always, we'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out, guys.